Dead Art Studios. We're doing a WikiArt deep dive today. It's going to be Gustav Klimt, probably my favourite, and we're going to go through all his works, see what we think, read a little bit about his life first. Let's get on the computer and go. Got my cocoa. I'm just going to take it nice and easy and enjoy the artwork of Gustav Klimt. Here he is. Beautiful photo of him holding a cat. He looks like a friendly fellow. He's got this nice furrowed brow, beard, his artist schmuck with this little nice design here, and sporting a haircut which I wish would make a comeback, embracing the baldness in a way of loving what you've got and showing off what you haven't. Charming looking fellow. Okay, so Gustav was born in July 1862 in Baumgarten, Austria, which is somewhere near Vienna, I believe, and he died quite early on in life, in his 50s, February the 6th, 1918, Vienna, Austria. It was the 1918 flu pandemic that unfortunately was the cause of his demise, along with some other ill health associated with it. He was, of course, Austrian. Now, we think of many painters as being essentially French, Spanish, Italian, and we don't often so quickly jump to think of Austria as a source of amazing art, but I think much like their cake, they are underappreciated in exactly how skillful they are in art, their importance of art history, and just generally that area. Germany, Austria has a lot of amazing artists that perhaps don't get the attention they initially deserved, because obviously in the 20th century we're associated very much with Paris and Picasso, so obviously Spain as well, and also a little bit later in the 20th century the New York scene burst into existence also. So I actually think he might be the greatest ever painter, but I'll let you decide that as we go on. So it was influenced Egon Schiele, who was also Austrian, and we can probably think of as Gustav's adopted naughty little brother, who certainly got into much trouble and in modern society would have been cancelled and maybe imprisoned. Was also basically cancelled, imprisoned back then also. He studied at the Universität für angewandte Kunst. Kunst I know is art. Angewandte, I do not know. So the University for angewandte Kunst, maybe academic art. That's what he started off and specialised in Austria. And his co-workers there is Egon Schiele and Coleman Moser, who I do not know. Let's read a little bit of his biography. So he was an Austrian symbolist painter. So the symbolists were interested in using their art to tell sort of, stories of the subconscious and things like that. It wasn't just representing what they saw around them, but it was bringing in some kind of meaning, and it is what it says on the tin, really, symbolism. His primary subject was the female body. I'm not sure that's essentially true, although it's definitely features heavy in his work, and he started off as basically an academic artist, so doing the job of painting portraits, many of which would have been females at the time, and he certainly does have some nudes and things like that, but it's pretty standard fodder for any artist around that time. His paintings, murals and sketches are marked by a sensual eroticism. They're definitely sensual. I'm not so sure about the eroticism. I think that's in the eye of the beholder to some extent, and he is especially apparent in his pencil drawings. Now, I was looking at some of his pencil studies. I could only really see one, and they're definitely beautifully done and so simplistic that it's almost annoyingly good at how little is on the paper, yet how accomplished it is. Klimt attended the Vienna University of Arts and Crafts in 1876, so maybe that was the long word I couldn't pronounce, and formed a company of artists with his two brothers and a friend. His brothers were painters and artists, and he sort of changed style into his more wilder modern style upon the death of his brother, it had a great effect on him. His middle brother, his younger brother, lived on and worked on, but not as a painter, I think, in some other field of the arts. He was awarded the Golden Order of Merit from the Emperor of Vienna. He was very, very skilled. In 1892, his father and one of his brothers died, leaving him responsible for their families. The family tragedy also affected his artistic vision, which helped him develop his own personal style, which we'll look at. Throughout his life, he was a controversial painter due to his subject matter. He was made an honorary member of the University of Vienna and of Munich. He was also a founding member and president of the Vienna Secession, which is another one of these artist movements, which I keep talking about, which have political and philosophical ideals behind how they present their art. A little group of people who tend to meet up and discuss these things and make like little zines, magazines and things like that, and publicise what they believe art should be. It sought to create a platform for new and unconventional artists, bring new artists to Vienna, and created a magazine to showcase its members' work. See, I'm seeing into the future here. Klimt lived a simple, cloistered life in which he avoided other artists in cafe society. Now, cafe society in Austria, especially Vienna, is very, very big. He often wore a long robe, sandals, and no undergarments. He also had many discreet affairs with women and fathered at least 14 children. Now, he definitely, if we think about artists in general, Picasso and things like this, it seemed to be very much something that was happening at the time. Interestingly, we think of those times as quite sort of naive and sheltered, but a lot of the behaviour of many of sort of at least the aristocracy and people who hung around with those guys, like the painters, certainly lived very multifaceted lives, shall we say. I don't know how your average day-to-day worker was living their life, whether they were having 14 children and things like this, or maybe if this was afforded to the more bourgeois and wealthy people of society. Certainly interesting to think about. And today, we may have previously thought of ourselves as more of a progressive society, at least up until recent times. And it certainly hasn't been, it's not really acceptable to go around having masses of children with different partners, unless, of course, you happen to be a billionaire. It may have been an indication for his passion of women, their form and sexuality, which was the main focus of many of his works. I don't think we need to place any judgment on that one way or the other than to say that he was a painter and he genuinely loved painting, and he hopefully genuinely loved the women that he was spending his time with in one way or another, and hopefully they all had a great old time, and we'll never really know. The majority of his paintings were characterized by golden or coloured swirling designs, spirals, phallic shapes depicting women in erotic positions. I think that's overselling it a little bit. He died in the influenza pandemic of 1918, leaving behind a posthumous legacy that few artists can rival. I would say essentially none. He's in the upper echelons, and for me, as someone who prefers late 19th century and 20th century art, when we're talking about other people like Rembrandt and, Leonardo da Vinci and things like this, we're putting him in the same category, but due to his more modern take, and like he was around in modern times, I think he deserves to be up there. Picasso obviously is put up there, but Picasso was a skilled painter, but he didn't choose necessarily to use it in that way all the time. And I don't think academically he did actually. I'm not sure he was quite as just skilled as Gustav. Let's start at the beginning then. A portrait of a girl, head turned slightly left. We're just going to go through it on the slideshow. Okay, so portrait of a girl, seems to be pencil or charcoal. Beautifully done. And early on in his career, he's trained as an academic artist, and he's doing portraits of people who can afford to pay for them, people of high society. He had patrons and things like that who would pay for him to come and do art, and he would be hosted in various places of wealth and stuff like that. Portrait of a Man with a Beard, 1879. An interesting stare on both of them. Very thoughtful and maybe a bit depressed. This one more thoughtful and more forthright. That's a masterful piece of facial hair there. And here we have Clara Klimt. Is that his sister or his mother? I'm not sure. I should have done my background work, but I haven't. And maybe his wife. Will not know. I'll look into it and get back to you on that at some point in the future. There's beautiful pearls painted in an academic style. Head study of a girl from Hana. Okay, a little soft around the edges, quite defined on the front, looking off again, which seems to be a theme of his work. Okay, so our first nude. If you're not into nudes in art, then this is probably not the episode of Paint and Chat for you. Paint and Chat, sorry, WikiArt deep dive for you. I also do Paint and Chat. So a man looking off again, down, doing something down here. Some work, making show off all the form of the body. Beautifully lit and painted. Quite a strong and athletic man. And these boxes as well, beautifully painted. But certainly just in a style of, a classical kind of painter, as we'd expect painting to be up until the explosion of modern art in the early 20th century and late 19th. So a fable. So part of your job as an academic artist might be paint stories and fables and religious depictions of things. And here we have one. We've got a lion down here, some little mice, some egrets or storks here, probably storks, I think, looking at these. One of the storks eating a frog, and a fox here interestingly, with a sort of scientific flask, just a flask of something. I'm not sure what's in it. And again, slightly different in style here, but beautifully painted again. This one, designed for a theatre curtain, see? So he's doing the general design. And the thing about WikiArt is it's put in, some of these pieces are not going to have been displayed in museums and stuff that, they're just various things they found that he's done. Idealis, 1884, Gustav Klimt. More probably something commissioned again. He had some work to do for one of the universities where he did a lot of murals and things like that. So maybe in that ilk. Again, very sort of almost Roman and Greek in style, classical, with the robes and the muscles and the people. And then here, the softer woman with the children in the middle surrounding it, almost like a mirror or a pool. These people looking off and thinking. And the mother sort of offering something to the children. Female organ player, some kind of angels up on the top there. Okay, so here's a pencil drawing female nude. Amazingly done. Interesting that, we've got an outline here where he's obviously drawn the outline of maybe the sofa there, but he seems to follow the side profile of this lady here, and he uses quite a harsh, well, not harsh, but a defined pencil line around the figure in a way that if I did it would just look awful, but he seems to just have mastered it. And like even in the chest, he's got a lot of dimensionality from the shading and the way the light hits the top of the chest, and the arm here has got something around it, and just the face and the nose in this position. And even if you look at how he's done the toes and the ankle, everything is just masterfully done. It's outrageously good. Okay, so a portrait of a man facing left, maybe more quickly done. But it's interesting how all these vertical lines are used as an extension from the hair here, and goes down into the clothing, and also another really nice little sketch. So this is a painted composition design to medicine. Interesting. This is maybe when we start to see the beginnings of his more famous later work. This female figure here, the way she's posed and dressed and holding her hands, and this figure up here, certainly starting to remind me of that. We've got skulls here, so we've got the beginnings of the symbolism coming in as well, maybe mixing in with his academic style, but also the beginnings of something a bit more symbolic sneaking into his work. Now, we've got 169 paintings on here, so we've got to kind of rattle through them. Globe Theatre in London. So is this Romeo and Juliet? And the theatre itself again, very skillfully done. Okay, Allegory of Sculpture, 1889. So we've got different, almost reminds me of money in a way. Like you've got this big head here, and then you've got this female figure here, which again is just masterfully sketched and painted, and a certain kind of face, which this long sort of nose and the way they look off seems to be very much part of a lot of his female models. And I think because he often painted people from the same families and stuff, they all kind of look alike. Another figure down here. I'm not sure the significance of all this, except for to say I think this female certainly hints at later on what's to come after the death of his brother and father, and when he starts painting in a much more modern style. Here we're in the old Berg Theatre, 1888 to 1889. It's beautifully painted. We've got this one-point perspective coming out from the back here and up and off this way. Very, very well done. I don't know what to say about it other than it is just an excellent piece. There's all this light and shadow and everything like this, and all people doing different things and looking around. How did he work from this? Did he have photographs and things? I just don't know. Portrait of Joseph Pembauer. I have no idea who he is. I'm sure I'll end up doing a bit of a rabbit hole search on who Joseph Pembauer was. Interesting, these little faces down here. I'm just sipping on my cocoa as well while we do this, and figures up here as well. That one looks almost Egyptian. Sappho. I don't know. Are we into Greek myth here? Two females, an older and a younger, stood together, working on something here. I don't know if that's like an instrument or some kind of loom or something. And off into the golden light of the night there. Two girls with an oleander. Now my partner's mother, who lives in Bavaria, not so far away from this area, has oleanders out on the patio in summer, and it certainly reminds me of those. And we've got these two ladies looking at them, tending to the plant. It's beautifully painted headdress, and the look on this lady's face is interesting on both of them. Not super happy. I think that was a thing back then, though. I'm not sure randomly smiling was a thing so much back then. Emily Floger, age 17. One of the families I think that he was involved with a lot, and would paint members of the family, and they would host him and pay for his lifestyle to some degree. Looking off again, definitely a use of perspective, and all very well trained and done. This is where I think, I'm not sure if Picasso was able or had the skills. He definitely could paint very good portraits. I'm not sure he had this level of sort of academic training, meticulousness to him. And maybe he could have achieved it, he just wasn't interested in doing so. Emily Floger again. Looking off, standing. Oleanders again. Nice garden. And a dress to match. young seated girl. Also, he'll be working with families here, doing portraits of people. This beautiful dress here, and the highlights on the face and the colours all harmonise and match. And then this red background. Interesting little handle on the chair there, and the hair styled, pulled back and down. It's all very precise. Interesting look on the face. Portrait of a lady. Again, more of the same, really. Now, I think I saw this in the Belvedere when I was there. I'm not 100% sure. I could be wrong, but I saw something very much like this, if it wasn't this, and it blew me away in person as to how sort of beautifully done the skin tones were and how accurate and lifelike it seemed, especially up here and around this area. Yeah, the Belvedere is well worth a visit. Obviously, it houses the Kiss, etc., but it also has some of his earlier works, and you really can see the all-round skill of him as a painter. Draft for a theatre curtain, so many an artist and Picasso and stuff were doing things like this, things for theatres and stuff, because as a painter you had to go out and like paint things and paint pictures on things. Things couldn't be printed out into massive scale, a bit like today, like billboards and things. So there would be jobs, especially in the theatre, of painting. Joseph Lewinsky. I wonder if he's a relative of Monica Lewinsky. Okay, so we've got the main bit here. I don't really understand the significance of it, but we've got these faces and these plants coming out here, and almost a bit symbolistic there, although it does look more like work of the day-to-day artist. And the same here, similar faces again, and these two faces looking embracing, and the roses coming in. Okay, this one's a little more crudely done. Music, 1895. It's got these flowers up and such in the background, and these faces here. A blind man, the blind man, not just any blind man, but the blind man. Looser, more loose style, wavy the way the paint's laid down, but still really quite into the areas of being a realistic portrait, maybe slightly more impressionistic. Portrait of an old man in profile. Should I say now? Whenever I try to draw in profile, it's always an absolute disaster. It always looks so two-dimensional, and the edges around here always look so edgy. And this one's done in a certain style. It's got this very interesting roundness and looking forward, and then the way the background sort of mixes in is very interesting as well. So it seems in his last couple of paintings to lend in less attention to the precise details of his academic training. This beautiful face here, with this beautiful delicate headdress, Junius, and again surrounded by these plinths. It almost looks like it's for a magazine or something. Now, Gustav always, every year, would go on holiday with his family, despite having perhaps several families and people who would look after him in places he would live. He would always go off with his mother to the Attersee every year for summer holidays. And I'm not sure this is here, but it may well be on one of his holidays, and there are some paintings of Attersee that he's done. And this, I think, is where we're starting to see the beginning of something else as well. So he's not doing his day-to-day work. He's doing something, I think, more for himself, and he's looking at nature. And he's got these interesting gold bits coming in. I'm not sure what this is all about, whether it's an artifact of some kind or whether he's painted that in. That's a bit of a mystery to me. And it's done loosely, but the colours are certainly very interesting, and it's got a new style to it. Okay, Schubert at the piano. Interesting. Was Schubert around at that time? Is this a retrospective? There's just so much I don't know about when people were around with other people. We've heard of all these famous musicians and artists. Who was seeing who? where was Picasso at this time? How famous was him? He was probably a starving artist at this time, or a relatively young boy. It's hard to know. I think he was around, active in some way. We've got a lifetime to research all this stuff. Okay, sculpture. Again, similar style. These sort of almost Greek or Roman statue heads in the classical style. Beautifully drawn or painted woman. Very softly done. The lines on the edge have started to soften, I would suggest, and the colours match the background rather than the actual person. And then again, one of these very particular faces that I think do belong to one of the aristocratic families that he was hanging out with. Study of the head of a blind man. Similar again. I don't know if that's a different study or something relating to the last one we looked at. Okay, much like that other portrait of a man that we saw that had that sort of brown background and everything. This is similar, looser, interesting, maybe more like his orchard painting that we just saw. I guess it was an orchard. Wow. More to do. I think he was probably had something to do with, like, I don't know, some kind of promotions or something, and they had to have these things made for like exhibitions and things, because it seems to have a very almost graphic design feel to it. Tragedy. Okay, so this is where we're starting to see maybe the symbolism coming through and a different style. 1898, bewegte Wasser. I'm trying to do my German Duolingo. I've not got to bewegte Wasser. I know it's water. So we've got these beautifully painted red-headed nudes here, sort of in the water, being almost pulled along with the flow of the water. They almost look like they're not dancing, just reclining and relaxing. We've got this rather strange face down here. Probably looks a little shocked or surprised. So we've got some kind of symbolism going on here. There's some kind of meaning to it. And the way that they just flow into the water is very interesting. Okay, some fish blood. More of the same in many ways. So he's coming up with a theme. This reminds me of a James Bond opening credits where you get the song and James is jumping about in silhouette, and then there's some female figures in silhouette as well. This is very softly painted, almost reminds me of like a Turner painting of his train or something at the end, but a lady by the fireplace. Very soft, everything blending into everything, which has got this very nice fireplace evening feel to it. Lady with cape and hat. Nice, interesting funnel shape and use of composition. Back to the old Greek tales or Roman tales. I'm going to say Greek. I could be wrong. Or maybe Egyptian. I don't know. No, we're going to say Greek. Use of gold, and of course gold was very important in his later works, in Kiss, etc. And here we see the beginnings of this. So echoes of his past work projecting into his future work. Sketch here, painted composition draft, jurisprudence. Okay, so just a draft there. Wow, look at this. Fringe and bob, almost like it's been cut for the painting. Very precise. And then this dress. Nice soft background. Definitely, if we're looking at his last few paintings in relation to these, compared to his earlier works, we're definitely seeing a change in a more increased softness. A poster for the first art exhibition of the Secessionists. So maybe this is what that was all about. The Secessionists is the group he was in, They had exhibitions. So obviously they're interested in the Greeks to some extent. Is this the Minotaur? I don't know. I wish I'd been taught more of this stuff at school. Sonia Nips, 1898. So a bit back to the academic style there. Look at the detail in that dress. Girl with hat and cape in profile. More of this downward stroking. Now this could be interesting to try as an exercise. A portrait with the downward vertical strokes when we're in the portrait form. Then are we back on holiday again, Gustav? Garden with chickens in Saint Ag something. So he's taking his time away again. Girl with long hair with a sketch for nude. Veritas. More of the vertical strokes, and then we've got a face sort of head on here as well. So a bit more dreamy. This is probably more of the secessionist work. Portrait of a woman. Portrait of Serena Leder. Okay, so this is one of his patrons, I think, or family of patrons who looked after him. And we've got this beautiful brown hair. I think she was a high society lady, considered one of the beauties of the time, all that kind of jazz. And this dress just melts into the background, and these beautiful strokes coming down here, and the relaxed way in which she's holding her shoulders and everything. It just looks so beautifully natural. Quiet Pond in the Park of Appeal, 1899. I think he had some kind of partner, a lady that he spent a lot of time painting with, who was also a secessionist, and they went into the mountains and did loads of painting together. I do seem to remember that. I feel like his biography was a little bit thin on information for this one that we read at the beginning. Okay, so it's looking at reflections specifically, and a bit impressionistic, a bit Monet maybe. Okay, look at these dresses. Boom, this is light, overexposure, weird night lights, reds, and if you're a photographer and you do some late night photography indoors, you get all these, what you think often is horrendous colours from the unnatural light, like the reds and the yellows and things, and he's certainly representing those. His eye for it seems to be really quite strong. And look at this cool hairstyle on this lady here, and these guys just listening to somebody playing the piano. Schubert again. Okay, a study for philosophy. Yes, I like it. Now, we're into true symbolism here now. Water nymphs, brackets silverfish, these faces, and then they're enclosed. Almost the idea of being underwater again. So we've got some very Gustav Klimty things here. It's very flat now. That's what he was famous for in his later works. He took a lot of that from Eastern painting, where, China, Japan and stuff, where perspective in like 1 point perspective, 2 point perspective was not seen as so important. And so he's got this flat style, he's got these embellishments around here. It's certainly not in the realms of the normal world, so it's symbolistic. And we've got this gold down here, and we've got two ladies. Now this is one of my favourite paintings that Gustav did, and it's not his normal subject matter, but here he is at Atzi, not too far away from the grandma of my daughter. Lives pretty close, and I want to take a trip there, and I haven't been yet, but maybe I will convince them to take me to the Atzi, and I will swim in it. This beautifully greeny turquoise drips of the water, heading back into these lilac-y, soft purpley greys, and a little bit of information on what's going off over here, but not too much in this. Just beautiful mass of colour, and then coming up to the front here where the pebbles would be. Just wonderful. It's just this bit of colour here, and it just really hits you. I suppose they could be lilies, but I don't think they are. There is certainly in the lakes around these areas a lot of plant life, but I think that's just supposed to be the ripples on the water. Farmhouse with birch trees. These strong downward verticals again forming the composition, a high horizon, and then what you might think is not an interesting area to compose, you might have balanced it more, but then getting these little flowers in the meadows, in the grassland, and this is going to, I think, inform some of the details on his later work. Same again, reflection in water. Tall popular trees, wow, this is amazing. That's so scarily dark and imposing, like a big figure standing in the background, and then we've got these little orchard trees here. And the sky, this is very imposing to think to put this in. You know, you'd almost think you could just leave that out and have the painting, but this just stands there watching over. Cows in the barn. That's left of field from his normal subject matter. Fir Forest 1901, look at it. We're seeing this new style coming in, these dots and patterns, circular patterns in tiny form, and these verticals again, and these nice little horizontal twigs. Interesting rusty golden coppers and lilacs and greys. Fruit trees again. So I'm starting to wonder whether he leaves the academic style behind and then starts to find what is going to be his new style of painting actually in nature, and then brings it back to what he knows of Eastern painting and also his painting of women in portraits, and then combines them all together. This is just amazing. It's almost like a pattern. I think if I painted this, I'd be upset that this thing didn't look right, but that's where I'm falling down, you know. He's just got the courage to go with it and create this. Look at this in the background here, these colours, this yellows, and then the light coming through, forming these lines into the shadow. Judith and the Head of Holofernes, or Holofernes. Okay, so this is where we're starting to see it, all the gold work again. It's this famous face, and the verticals coming down again, and obviously semi-nude. Here's the Eastern impression coming a little bit. He's been doing a bit of lithography, a bit of printing, and then back to the vertical pine forests. Portrait of Rose von Rosthorn Friedman. The dots are coming in. See, that almost carries on from his previous work in nature. Look, these little dots. And like we saw in the grasslands, it's coming into the way it decorates the highlights on the dress and the sides. The fingers here are more stylized, very much like seen in Egon Schiele's work to a high extent. And then we've got the neck is more like the neck of a bottle, perhaps, than the neck of a person in some ways. And there's jewelry at the top as well, sort of really highlighting this region, which seems to be highlighted a lot in his work actually. So we're back again. These are the dots that we need to be looking for, the flowers that he brings into his portraits later on. Januar. Okay, so more maybe the secessionist stuff. and Hymn to Joy detail from Beethoven Frieze, more of that kind of thing. Now here we are, we're starting to get into a portrait that seems a lot more like what we know of Gustav, even though he's spanned everything, hasn't he? Hands clasped together, very vertical, very narrow. So verticalness is important to him. These little green bits coming in, and this red-headed lady again, that seems to be a major feature of his work. A beautiful dress again. Back to the forests, Buchenhain. Taken from one and given to the other. Goldfish, exquisitely done. Goldfish, so we're back in the water. The fish are here, they're golden. He's using all the gold, he's got the flow and the way the ladies' bodies flow. And then here we've got perspective as well, heading back into 1 point perspective. And the nude here, looking back with her red hair and a little smile this time. And a smile up there, so something's changed there as well. Just an amazing piece of art, especially this lower figure here. And then just throw a portrait of a kid in there straight after. You know, variety is the spice of life. Okay, so now we're really seeing these shapes coming in that we've seen perhaps from the trees in the meadows, but being worked into the dresses, like the flowers and the way. It's almost like cut and paste, isn't it? It's almost like collage. Now the way these bits are put in, the hands have lost all their reality, even compared to some of the sketch we looked at earlier. Like, it's gone. We know he can do it, but he's not using it, and it's very sort of precisely made to look angular and almost arthritic in some ways and disjointed. And the face, much more, I would say, more photographic in style, but then there's this patterning around and embellishment. It's a very interesting juxtaposition. And then back to something softer again. We've got a lot of this vertical line, so I'm going to remember this for my artwork. And the dress, all a lot more softer. Perhaps this lady didn't want one of his new crazy paintings. Maybe she wanted something a bit more from the past. Okay, and we're back in the Secessionists again. There's another little meet-up of that going on. What's this crazy figure, monkey here, ape, something. The teeth are interesting. So I'm guessing by this point he's lost his brother and his father, and he's heading in something new. More of the red-headed female figures again in the water, almost again. So I think this sketch, I mean, this is for the lady that seemed to be at the bottom of the picture we looked at earlier. But look at how he draws the toes. He's got this like just a precise outline, but then these little horizontal marks really do show the joints of the toe. The joints of the toe, and even though there's few marks on there, it really does give depth of it. He's worked on the shape of the posterior to some degree and filled it out by the looks of it there, and then cut in on the waist there, and then just a little hint on the back, the tone of the muscles on the back and the arm going up and down. But this is definitely the feet around with the posterior that is the focus. But when I try and sketch with line like this, it doesn't look anything like this. It just looks bad. And I mean, we could sit and count the lines, and we'd be not into triple figures, I don't think, really, for the harder ones. And yeah, and it just looks amazing. Okay, so now it's took back from the paintings that he's doing of his high society women and pushing it into the nature, and they're going back and forth and mixing in, I think. We're back at Attersea, and this one is, again, just amazing. The lemon yellows, the greens. We've got the island, but that's barely visible, and the way it's probably forcing off the water and causing the different bits of light is what he's interested in. These very high horizons, like insanely high horizons, but it works and it's balanced. I'd love to have that in my house. Okay, more sketching. A big old ugly birch tree. He's got the roots there. It's very right there at you, isn't it? It's interesting. The blacks, the dark colours, the dark greens, the little specks of yellow. He's painting that as it is. He's not like reimagining it. Then again, like I say, much more stylized now, and these leaves and everything, it seems to inform his portraits. The original earlier birch forest that he was painting, and informed his portraits, and then what he did in the portraits is bringing back into his birch forests and then sort of cycling it around and iterating and then bringing it back into here. We have a pregnant lady, Hope, and got the skulls again, so there's more of the symbolism, and we've got different layers, and I'm not sure what this character is all about. And more of the gold, which we've been seeing in some of the work that he was doing for the secessionist sort of pamphlets and things. Now we've really gone full-on mosaic into the pear tree, haven't we? All these different colours, and it's almost, I don't know what to say, mind-boggling, something that you could look at for a long time, and then it's gone right back into the tiny details. Oh, another poplar tree. These are awesome, these giant poplars. And the moody clouds in the background, kind of the same. These overwhelming figures. It's almost like he's made them absolutely gigantic. They are gigantic, but he's almost even further exaggerated in the way they seem like these large looming giants in nature. More secessionist stuff. Portrait of Hamanigalia, 1904. Where are we at? 48 minutes. We've got 169 paintings. Got to speed up. Portrait of Margaret Stumberer Wittgenstein. Okay, Rose under the trees. We'll do the first 100, and then we may come back for another WikiArt deep dive on Gustav, so we can do him justice. So again, much like that last pear tree one we saw, this is Roses Under the Trees. More of the same style, but it's all just like one big flat mass now, isn't it? Okay, so we're starting to see these bent at right angles figures. Everything's very flat and two-dimensional, and then like we just saw in the trees, but more defined, these dots, and like we saw in the flowers, and the gold coming in again. Sleeping together. And this older lady here, maybe, looking down, holding their head in her hands, and we've got the sleeping mother and child. Definitely symbolism there. Design for the Stocklet Frieze, night 1905. Country garden with sunflowers, 1905 to 1906. So we can really start to see this new style coming through, and this is, we've moved from the late 19th century, where everything was very academic, and he's developed his own style, because I imagine a lot of the academic painters were doing the same kind of thing, almost being churned out in not quite a factory of people, but you were probably all leaving with the same set of skills, and there was ones better than others, but fundamentally they were similar. And like Gustav was clearly one of the best because he won that award from the Emperor of Austria, or was it Vienna? I think it was Austria. But now he's moved into this new style of his own. Beautiful. And just a big two-dimensional mosaic of flowers. I mean, we can hint that this is further back because it's higher in the picture, and that's how it was done in Eastern art. If you were higher up, you were further back, and of course that's how perspective works, but we haven't got an obvious vanishing point. It's an XY axis. There's no Z axis heading into the center along this diagonal here. More so here, look. So this is more proper 1 point perspective. So look at the two, how this is so much more flat and layered and mosaic-like. Like a matrix almost, and this heads back over here. You could argue in some ways they're both the same because this is just higher than this, but it's this axis along here that gives you the perspective. The flowers very similar. So we're on number 99, Portrait of Fritz Riedler. We've got this like we're in a room, but the room's getting discombobulated and broken down. Let's have a look at the heads in front of this decorative piece, which we assume is on the wall. Again, we've got some of this. The neck again is quite bottle-like, and also it seems to be highlighted by a necklace. Is that something that was important at the time in society, or is that something that Gustav liked? And this is like some kind of ornate head adornment, but it's, I think, supposed to be in the background. Very interesting. And again, more of the little squares. Were they actually on the walls? Did he hang this stuff in the background and create the scene? And then these beautiful patterns of the chair, but it's so broken down that it almost just becomes a flat pattern of its own, and almost like this collage effect of being cut out and pasted on top of each other. And for number 100, we're in the Blumengarten, the flower garden. We've got some what look like nasturtiums here, maybe some dahlias, and here are some well, let's remember some like morning glories, what are they called? Petunias down here, and some like daisy-like flowers down at the front, and maybe something over here. Some roses maybe there. That's just me trying out my gardening knowledge. Okay, so now we're back to the very flat style again with not much hint at perspective because of the mass of everything is so sort of next to each other. We can give a hint at what's supposed to be in front of each other, but it's very flattened. I hope I'm making myself sort of understood. Let's sneak at 101 and we'll start there for next time. Okay, so we'll be going to see the University of Vienna ceiling paintings. Interesting. So I can look into a little bit of those because I think they were quite important in his future works, where we're going to see his most famous stuff. Okay. So there we go. We've got to painting number 100. So we're going to do Gustav Klimt in 2 parts because we're about an hour for this. Dead Art Studios. WikiArt Deep Dive. See you next time.